Isn't it amazing? I mean, my head spins, and I'll be calling him in a little bit, going, "Okay, say that again." So,
Ron, I don't know about you, but doesn't this just sound like the best coffee clutch ever, Ron? This is where we want to be chatting.
Welcome, Ron, as well. So I have you two on because, and correct me if I'm not saying this right, because I'm not afraid of being corrected. I'm not afraid of being put on the straight and narrow. Dan does it all the time. So you guys have been, how do I want to say this? You've been writing notices, and you've been sending them to legislators, to school boards, to selectmen, to governors, all sorts of people. Let's call them public servants who work for us. And you've been notifying them of their actual job, what they're supposed to be doing, what an oath of office means, because it's not something you go, yeah, I swear, thank you. And then you go into the other room and pretend you're all power and glory to everybody. And they're not, dictators, although they all feel that they are. Talk to us about this. Well, first of all, tell us how you got into it, and then walk us through a really basic affidavit, why we the people need to know about them. We don't need attorneys, we don't need lawyers, but we need to know our constitutional rights, our inalienable rights, our civil rights. Talk to me about this.
Oh my goodness, Ron, where do we begin?
That's a huge question. That was a lot of questions all stuck together.
Yeah, well, first of all, I just have to say, going back to your introduction, Jocelyn, and thank you so much for having us. You guys in New Hampshire are really bringing new meaning to the slogan, live free or die. And we want that to flood across the country, which is why we put together something called the 50-State Challenge. And it was published in the Boston Broadside, which I know you're aware of, and we've got to get you in there too. Essentially saying to people, we've all been out there slugging away for 3 years where they've tried to clamp down on us and take away our lives and our freedom. And we're getting to a point where we're not only exhausted, but we feel victimized and powerless. And the truth couldn't be more the opposite. So it's so exciting to hear this good word being spread and actually seeing it put to action by people like Daniel and yourself and so many other amazing, courageous people from New Hampshire, not the least of whom are the New Hampshire 9 and Karen Testerman, who ran for governor. And the whole point is just to empower people with the information that they have power beyond measure. I had to chuckle when you were saying, we're going to make lives we're going to ruffle some feathers with these legislators who are making life miserable for us. Well, you know what? They've gone out of bounds. They haven't been doing their simple job. And the great news that we're trumpeting is that if you look at everything through a lawful lens, and you look at the simple principle that our government has the sole purpose of securing our rights, you use that as a measure, and the outcome is always in your favor. And it's so exciting.
It is.
We're just spreading the word everywhere we can. So I'll jump back over to Ron to talk about how he got into it, but our motivations kind of started in the same place, children.
Great.
Yeah, mine started with COVID. So COVID brought me into this mess, and prior to working on this particular realm, I was an expert in human behavior. So I was actually coaching. I was a strategic interventionist. And when Fauci got on the TV and he started speaking, something wasn't right. I looked in his movements, and he was just lying. And I knew immediately he was lying. His body language was telling me he was lying. His eye was telling me he was lying. All of his physiology was telling me he was completely full of it. So I knew he was lying. I just didn't know why. So I started paying extreme attention. Okay. And I started getting my major education about the COVID scam. But so that's where I started fighting. As they were pushing back, I was pushing back. And one of the big things we did was every single district attorney throughout the entire United States was delivered on Valentine's Day at 3 o'clock on the same time, same bat channel, all the Fauci dossier and all the evidence against what was going on. Every single
I was part of a
district attorney.
group of, I was part of a group of 10 who went to Middlesex District Attorney Marion Ryan. And we said, we're giving you chain of custody of evidence of crimes against humanity. State police came in, they said they want to hear what you have to say. We said, no, we want this presented directly to Marion Ryan. These are crimes against humanity and we need them investigated. So basically, you know, we're calling upon our public officials to actually do their jobs.
Wow.
And it's the beginning of the exposing of Anthony Fauci.
Yep.
And all the harm he's done and all the corruption. It's just phenomenal. But I have a vaccine injured family member, and Ron has 2 disabled children, probably because of vaccine injury. So when COVID came and we were both being threatened by that, you know, the possibility of these children having to be forced to take shots and possibly be further injured, we're like, And also, Ron has a pretty moving story about something from World War II that was also major motivation to look in. Wait a minute, this is America. Why are we being treated like we live in a third world country? This is land of the free and home of the brave. And when you learn what your rights are, because like your show open says, if you don't know your rights, you have no rights at all. When you learn this simple information and this simple principle to just shift perspective a little bit, it is so empowering.
Awesome.
You can protect your rights and your family, which, as I said, is a major motivation for myself and Ron.
That's right. Now
Ron, is that
imagine,
too
imagine that you decide to go on a trip and you have a bunch of teenagers at home. So you go on a trip for an extended period of time and you leave your teenagers home alone with a credit card for an extended period of time.
Oops.
What do you think is going to happen to your home while you're gone?
It's going to be destroyed and they're going to have the best time of their lives and spend as much money as they can.
They're going to think they're in charge for a while, right? So what they're going to do is they're going to invite their hoodlum friends in. They're going to charge your credit card to the limit. They're going to trash the place, and then they're going to lock you out. That's exactly what happened to us. Except for we didn't know we were in charge. We didn't know we were in charge. We didn't know we were the head of household.
Yep.
We've been convinced that we were, the tenant. Well, we're the masters of the house.
And actually, Ron takes this story one step further, because I said, so when you notice the government, it's just like a landlord. If you haven't paid your rent, then the landlord's going to give you a notice that you need to be evicted. And Ron said the most profound thing. You know, if you were the tenant and you didn't want to be evicted, wouldn't you just lie and cheat and kick and scream, right?
Yeah.
That's what our government is doing. They're lying, cheating, kicking.
Yeah, I also say that the Constitution is the frame or the cage that we put government in. So the Constitution always trying to convince people to let them out of that cage. So it does it by telling people that, this cage is made by a bunch of old white guys who were slave owners from a long time ago. It's a living, breathing document, yada, yada, yada. It has no relevance today, and all the other lies they tell. And that's because they want out of the cage, because the cage restricts their power. It limits their authority. They don't have authority unless we delegate it to them. And that's the beauty. All political power is inherent in the people. Go ahead.
And they have amassed so much power, and they are destroying all things good in this country because of it. And they need to be called on the carpet for it. And so the notice process begins by, basically, we like to chuckle about it. We send them a notice and say, according to fundamental law and our God-given rights protected under the Constitution, what you're doing is unlawful. And so you need to stop doing it. Otherwise, you need to leave your job. It's that simple. Your office is null and void. Go back to private life. And so then you say, basically the notice is saying, we know that you know that we know that you know what you're doing. So you can't claim that you don't know that what you're doing is wrong, because we're telling you right here, and we're challenging you to correct it. If either you deter the bad behavior, or you step out of office, and then you end up getting fired. So that's basically the first step of it, is to let them know that we're aware and give them an opportunity to refute it, and they can't. If they try to refute it, they incriminate themselves, just like Daniel was describing. You can't
Mhm.
allow for one right and not allow for another. All of them are God-given rights that cannot be separated.
So let me just ask you, so you said, what do you mean by fundamental law? Because that's a word a lot of people have not heard. We've heard common law, God's law, constitutional law, but what's fundamental law?
Fundamental
Common
law
law.
is law that existed prior to the founding of our nation that is in line with reason and natural law.
Okay.
So in line with God's law. And they're
Okay.
based on fundamental principles that have been around forever. And these fundamental principles are accepted by all as truth, statements of truth that are irrefutable. So
And-
they're presented usually as maxims of law. So you can
Okay.
buy them or get them on in collections of maxims of law, or you can go to, like, John Locke has a book, and it's Two Treatises on Government. The Two
Okay.
Treatises on Government is full of law. It's full of the law, and John Locke is one of the ones that the founding fathers studied, and he actually has a section on there about the dissolution of government. So how do you
And
dissolve
Jocelyn,
government?
the beauty. Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
The beauty of it is that the maxims of law are so simply written, and as Thomas Jefferson says, our laws need to be written so simply that a man can read them while he's running. So that suggests that, if somebody's chasing them and trying to, incarcerate him or whatever, he would know how to defend himself. The other amazing and beautiful thing about fundamental law is it's based on Judeo-Christian values, essentially based on the Bible.
Yep.
So it's a good, strong foundation, and it's the one of the pillars of our great country, foundation on which we built our country.
And so is the notice process. So the notice process, according to Matthew, the book of Matthew says, when somebody wrongs you, you go up to them and say, hey, you wronged me. You try to work it out. But if they don't listen, then you come back to them with two witnesses. That's called a notice. And then if they still don't listen, then you go to the church or the court via affidavit, court of record. You create your document, your court of record. And then you expose them with truth that they can't refute.
But they look at
Ron
you like
does
you have 7 heads, though, because you go in with those, because I've gone in with notice of trespass, notice of liability, and then I just did the notice that you helped Karen and I with, and you walk in and say, I'd like to serve you this notice, blah, 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 and they look at you like, what is this? They have no idea what you're talking about. And so far I've served 2 years in a row, and I just served with Karen to the Secretary of State, the Speaker of the House, and one other that I can't think. And they're literally, they actually don't show up now. They let their admin take it. And we've heard nothing. Completely ignore us. They don't answer us. And you said there's a reason for that.
Correct. They can't answer you.
Why?
Because what you're giving them is a bunch of statements of irrefutable truths. Now, if they were, and you're telling them,
be self-evident.
Yes, the only way you can answer me is by writing me a statement under the pains and penalty of perjury. So you have 14 days to look this over and tell me what I said that was wrong under the pains and penalty of perjury. And if not, well, this stands as true.
So then what do you do with it? So you've served them, you've made these statements, give me a couple of, give me two or three really simple example of a statement.
Okay.
Really?
Let's look at a broad idea, this idea of immunity. 1986, they passed the Vaccine Immunity Act. Okay. So this act supposedly grants immunity to Pfizer and Moderna. So did the PrEP Act, right? They're saying that Pfizer and Moderna has immunity from prosecution because of the PrEP Act. Well, there's a problem with that. Because first of all, if you read Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, which lists the 18 powers that we gave to Congress, nowhere in there does it say that we gave them power to grant any immunity.
Correct.
But fundamental law says, whenever you're wronged or damaged, you shall have a remedy. That's fundamental law, cannot be refuted.
Mhm.
So if I'm wrong and damaged, how can I have immunity? How can I have a remedy if you have immunity?
If you have immunity. Wow.
How can
So-
I?
You can't. I mean,
Correct.
there's no.
So another part of fundamental law says you can't have a power that you were never delegated. And I can't delegate you a power I never had originally.
So if they go outside of those 18 delegated authorities that we, the people, gave to the legislature, they can't make new ones. They can't skirt around them. They can't pretend they don't know them and ignore them. Those 18 stand as that rock.
Yes. And it says a delegated power cannot again be delegated. So here's a problem. I delegate the United States Congress a power. They can't take that power and give it to anybody else. Fundamental law. I can even tell you it's Maxim 11A. So you can quote it
So,
exactly.
Jocelyn,
Maxim
these
11A.
maxims are so powerful, and Ron does a wonderful, well, he does a series of courses that he teaches people, and the way that he does it with another fabulous patriot who's had tremendous result with the notices, and we'll get to that in a minute, is that he has her read the words and then he asks people questions. The words are so simple and so powerful, and it's like you just love sitting there and experiencing people when they go, oh, I could have had a VA, and the light bulb goes off in their head and there's no turning back. We did a particularly powerful spaces, a space on Broadsize X account yesterday. And there was a woman who had just been with Steve Kirsch the following week. And she said, the way this was explained was so simple and so powerful. So if people are really wanting to learn this and not be overwhelmed by it, that might be a good place to start. And also visiting We the People, the number 2.us. That's
Yep.
Ron's website. And
Okay.
there are tremendous amount of resources there. But getting back to the results with the notice, did you know we noticed Governor Baker almost exactly 3 years ago.
Really?
As soon as we had been sick of 6 months of the restrictions and the mandates, did not want to get the shots, did not want to wear masks, did not want to stand the ridiculous 6 feet apart and all that nonsense. And we said, you are overstepping your powers, the emergency powers. You're not allowed to do what you're saying and force people to do things against their will. You're violating our rights. You're committing treason, and that makes your office null and void. Well, within 2 weeks of him receiving that, it was myself, it was almost 200 people signed that notice.
Yeah. But wait a minute, this is for the good of all. But wait a minute, you don't want to kill grandma. But wait a minute, come on. You are being so mean that we don't want anybody
And
to get
selfish.
sick. This is, yes, it's terrible, Joan.
Yeah.
What do you say to
Yeah.
those people that got bamboozled?
Maxim.
I said, I am
51I.
the grandma.
But Maxim
What's that, Ron?
51I says individual liberties are antecedent to all government.
What was that, Maxim 51?
51I.
Aye.
We
Okay.
don't have collective liberties. We have individual liberties.
Right.
And without individual liberties, we don't have any collective anything. What we
So
do
you
is
can't say all of you have to do this.
right.
You
You can't
cannot.
say all of you need to
No
mask.
government can say everyone has to wear a mask and everyone has to get the shot.
So is that how they use we're a democracy? So 51% mob rule. So because 51% of us say you got to wear a mask because that's the right thing to do. But we're not a democracy, we're a republic. So therefore we have individual rights. Would that be correct?
Right.
Yeah. John Adams
Exactly.
referred to a democracy, a republic, as a government of laws, not of men.
Okay.
And what law is he speaking about? He was speaking about fundamental law that we all are under. And these fundamental laws can be expressed as what we call natural rights.
Wow. So they
And what's happening in the world now, Jocelyn, is that we're upsetting the natural order of things with all this virtue signaling and shaming, everything you just described. And it's got everything spinning out of control. And it's time to take it back, wind it back, people, to the basics on which our great country was built. Go back to the simple principles. Enough of this confounding and confusing of the legal system. And boy, Daniel just has such tenacity to be out there slugging away and be in their playground and using these principles in their playground. And I really admire him for the success that he has. And people have to understand, if they really learn this and overlay it to anything they're doing, anything they're involved with, a complaint, a grievance, breaking the law, a ticket, a problem with the school committee, that they'll have huge result. In fact, Massachusetts, so 3 years ago, we did that notice. And over the last several months, Ron and several other people have been inundating the Massachusetts legislature with notices. And guess what, Jocelyn? They just had their least productive legislative session, not in months, not in years, in decades. Coincidence? I think not. And this is what keeps happening. Like Ron noticed Pfizer and a huge thing happening, which he can tell you about. We've had lots of luck with school committees and because they can't refute the truth. These are truths that are self-evident, Jocelyn. And all we're doing is sharing the truth. And there's power in that knowledge. And they can't refute it. So it's very exciting.
So tell us about the Pfizer. What did you?
Well, it was actually to Congress. I sent Congress a message with what we were just talking about, the same vein, saying, I'm sorry, Mr. Congressman, where did you get the authority to grant immunity to Pfizer and Moderna? I'm kind of confused. It says I cannot be, if I'm ever wronged and damaged, I shall have a remedy. It says that you can't, no immunity shall be enacted. That's kind of contrary to what that says. It says, that in order for you to have a right, I have to have delegated to you, and I don't see me ever delegating that to you. And Article 1, Section 8 says I never did. The 10th Amendment says if it's not written, you don't have the power, and it's definitely not written. So I'm kind of confused. Where exactly did you give Pfizer and Moderna immunity? And if you don't tell me where they got immunity, well, that means that you agree with me that they don't have immunity. And guess what? Pfizer and Moderna don't have immunity.
But nobody's saying that except for you. It's slowly creeping out because they've done such a good job of gaslighting everybody in line.
Well, actually, they came out and announced that there's no immunity for Pfizer and Moderna.
Oh, did they say that during, one of the football games and they did it like this?
Oh, of course they did. And in fact, when I sent the notice, there was crickets. Except for immediately, doctors started running for cover saying, where am I going to get immunity from? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Doctor.
Right.
You're under that.
Right.
You don't get immunity either. Because nobody gets immunity, because nobody has the power to wrong me or damage me without me getting a remedy.
Holy cow. So,
yeah. No, I remember it coming out in the mainstream media. I was shocked that news came out in mainstream media a couple months ago.
I must have totally missed that, but then again, I've got 100 balls in the air. I'm trying to keep them all up.
Sure.
It would seem to me that we need, I don't know, 1 million people to notice their legislature in their state and say exactly what you said and put it out that, and oh, by the way, hospital ABC and doctor LMNOP and nurse,
Right.
FYI,
Right.
you have no immunity and I've been injured this way, this way, this way. You locked me away for how many weeks? You didn't let me go to church. You didn't let my kids go to school. You forced me to put bacterial diapers on my face. You made me, you browbeat us about how we were killing everybody when that was exactly what you were doing. I'm shocked that there's not more people doing this. Why is that?
Well, because they don't know about it. That's why we're shouting it from the rooftops. We are heralding this great news. And, you know, we're in a season of joy and happiness. And this is really great news. It empowers people. It's like you discover something within yourself that you never knew was there before because you didn't have the knowledge. So knowledge is power. And the fabulous thing about this is, regardless of whether you're being pulled over for a ticket or somebody's trying to force you to wear a mask, or we recently had someone who refused to go through the x-ray machine for health reasons, all you have to do is say, by what authority? That's your mantra. By what authority are you taking this action against me? Because it's my understanding that it's unlawful for you to do that, and you have no right to do that. So if you can show to me, I'll give you another really powerful example, because CPS is really what got me in this fight several years ago. And when I learned how insidious and evil and corrupt CPS was, I'm still in disbelief about what they get away with just by sheer intimidation and corruption and motivation, because the kids are nothing more than a commodity. They're in the system. When a child is in the system, approximately 27 people make stat that pays their salaries. The case managers actually do things like, I got to get 2 more kids in this month if I'm going to make my car payment. I'm serious. And then they drug them up, they double and vaccinate them, and then they make them a handicap, special needs. And then they get 7 times as much money for taking care of them in the system. And the foster parents get 7 times as much money to adopt them. And then the state gets all sorts of money for adopting them. Anyway, there's one story that I have to tell you. So this grandmother was protecting her grandchild, and CPS had come and said, no, you have no rights here, and we're taking this kid. And they called the police. Well, the grandmother was armed with a notice. She sat the police officers down and said, look at this notice. It's my understanding that you're here to protect me and my rights and what I want to do, and that if you take this action, you'll actually be violating your oath of office to uphold the Constitution. Therefore, you know, you're going to get yourself into trouble if you do this. The office looked over the information, looked at the case manager, and they said, what you're doing is unlawful and we will not participate in it. And they left, and she has that baby now. Isn't that awesome?
That is a beautiful story.
I want everyone who's tangled up to know about this.
You want to hear what else?
Yeah.
I told you there are 18 distinct authorities in the Congress.
Yeah.
You know what authority they didn't have?
What?
They created CPS.
It's a totally fraudulent agency.
So, in fact, not only did they not have the authority to create CPS, it's part of Title 42.
Okay.
And Title 42 is non-positive law, which means it's never been passed by Congress. And in the instance of something that the initial CPS, which was under the Social Security Act, it says that the statute should not be construed to give any legislator, government official authority to take a child away from the parent against their will.
Holy cow.
So the law itself says they can't take children. And it's never passed by Congress anyway, because in no instance can you be wronged or damaged. And nobody can violate your due process rights.
And they're service corporations. They're keyword corporations. And what is the sole purpose of a corporation? To make money. They do not care about human beings. They don't care about human lives. They just want those numbers.
Yep. Which is why they license everything. Everything's got to be certified, because it's another layer on you to make money, another layer on you to make money. Is Daniel in the house still? I didn't know if Daniel had to go off with his pups. Are you here, Dan? Nope, he had to go off with the dogs. Okay, that's all right. because he actually raises German Shepherds, very, very special German Shepherds. And when they need daddy,
Oh,
let me tell
that's
you,
wonderful.
yeah, he's right there with them. So
That's
yeah,
wonderful.
if you don't mess with him. Talk to me about what you've got in your hands there, Ron, and then I want you to tell everybody how to reach you again.
This is one of my first big notices. This
Okay.
is my notice to Congress regarding the immunity.
Okay.
That's it. Look at how small it is. It's
2
1
pages.
3/4 of a page. That's it.
Beautiful.
And this took
And
away
by
their immunity.
contrast, I'm sorry. Go ahead. What's
That
what's
took
that,
away their
Ron? I'm
immunity.
sorry.
The first time I learned how to do notices at the beginning of the process, I was learning from somebody who was teaching me how to do 79-page documents that I couldn't even understand because it didn't make any sense. Now we're boiling
Right,
it
but
down to
Ron, let's talk.
1.5 pages.
Ron, let's talk about the notice we gave Charlie Baker 3 years ago. So Ron, look, we didn't meet Ron until about a year and a half later, but we presented him with this notice, which the notice itself was 16 pages, and it had 69 pages of documents substantiating the arguments about why masks don't work and why the shots were this and that. And it was very, very well thought out. But it's the interesting thing about it, Ron, is the real meat of it is in the first paragraph, because it just goes to fundamental law. And that was signed by almost 200 people.
That was a beautiful notice. That was very impressive, that notice.
Well, there's something to be
Thanks.
said about keep it simple, because
Right.
when the corporation and they made it so that we the people could no longer take our grievances to the general court, which at that time was the legislative branch, when that all got bundled up and shoved over to the third branch of government, and they took it all over. So, you couldn't say diddly, you couldn't talk to the general court, you had to hire a lawyer. That's when the paperwork and all this garbage exploded, and how none of us could understand what was going on. I mean, you read the first page and you just want to beat your head on the wall. But when you look at a notice and you use fundamental law, common law, and you make a notice, hey, dude, you're not jabbing that in my arm, because it's my body, my choice, to use another phrase that, is applicable across. And pointing these people out in plain English. When we did that with our notice, they're like, well, what do you mean? Well, it's really plain here. We made it so anybody could understand, especially me. So I'm telling you what you're stepping on and what you're doing wrong. And you need to pay attention, because I don't need a lawyer and I don't need legalese to tell you that you're taking away my rights. And that's what people understand. And it goes right down to the school boards. And I'm about ready to just go down there, and I'm just going to whip out these notices and be like, you work for me, and you're harming me with all these local taxes that are going to teach all this, pardon me, crapola and BS, because you feel, I don't give a shit what you feel about. This is what the money's for. This is what you spend it on. If you're not accomplishing ABC, you're done. This is what we need to do.
So
that's right. You're here for the sole purpose of securing my rights. And I love to say, and Ron, I don't mean to cut you off, but this is a perfect time to make this point. The beauty of this process is that you don't need a group. All you need is yourself. It's great to have a group to support and work with, and we help each other. You don't need to raise money. I mean, there are some minor expenses involved. If you have to raise money to pay for a job form website or something like that, okay. And you don't have to hire a lawyer. You don't have to raise money to pay a lawyer. You can just do this. We don't even have to go to court. We can form our own people's court to put them on record, because the step after the notice is that if they don't respond, which they won't, and if they don't curb their behavior, then you move on with the affidavit, which under pains and penalty of law, you're putting truth on record. And so now it's on this record, this public official is knowingly, willingly not upholding their oath, which is the most important part of their job. So why should they still stay in office if they're blatantly committing treason and acting like tyrants and taking abusing their power. So that's what's so exciting about this. This is really, really good news to share. Everyone should share it everywhere. Go ahead, Ron. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you
No,
off.
I was going to say, I wanted to finish what I want to say with very simple takeaways. So we were just talking about fundamental law and all the brilliance of fundamental law. Let's give fundamental law the power. Ready? Massachusetts Constitution, and it's all in all the constitutions. It says, a frequent recurrence to fundamental principles of the Constitution and a constant adherence of those of piety, justice, moderation, temperance, industry, and frugality are absolutely necessary to preserve the advantages of liberty and maintain a free government. The people ought consequently to have particular attention to all those principles in their choice of officers and representatives. And here's where it gets good. And they have a right to require of their lawmakers and magistrates an exact observance of fundamental principles and the
Exact
execution of laws necessary
observance.
for the good administration of the Commonwealth.
Oh my God, that needs to be a T-shirt.
So that's great. But my favorite is, and this is my absolute favorite, it comes from Alabama Constitution, but it doesn't matter because we have equal rights under the law. Alabama Constitution, Article 1, Section 35. The sole and only legitimate end of government is to secure our rights. Every other function is a usurpation and oppression. Point
Say
blank,
that one more
done.
time. Brilliant.
The sole and only legitimate end of
Exactly.
government is to secure our rights, and every other function is usurpation and oppression. Now let's take fundamental law and just give it the kicker it needs. Fundamental law says every act of usurpation against the sovereignty of the people is an act of treason.
Boom. All right.
Time to
Tell
call-
everybody.
Time to call it what it is.
What's that?
Tell
Power,
everybody
right?
what your website is.
We the people #2.us.
.us. All right. I want to thank you.
And Ron just did a song. Jocelyn,
ahead.
Jocelyn, Ron just did a song called "Time to Call Treason" by its name. It's a fabulous song. He and
And we can
Stiletto
put
are
that
going to do a
website?
duet.
What's that?
Is that on the
You can
website?
hear it on We the People.
It is, and it's also
Yep.
on YouTube.
Ooh.
Treason by Ron Bouchard.
I think I'll get that and play that next time, if you don't mind.
No.
Would you let me play that?
Please
So every
do.
time a tyrant says something that is treasonous, I would encourage people just to play that song. Make memes, put the song everywhere. It's time to call treason by its name.
And just to finish, treason is not just the thing that they do up there in the federal government in the Senate. You know, it's that big bad thing that they put up on this pedestal. It's not following your oath of office. Malfeasance and maladministration is treason.
Yes.
I think we could do mathematical problem. Malfeasance plus maladministration equals treason.
Right.
Oh, so
Exactly.
quick question. You bring up the point about due process. What about the people from January 6th? We'll answer that before we go. How about that? You want to go for that, Ron?
Yeah, January 6th,
Oh,
the
yeah.
problem with January 6th is they listen to lawyers, and even when they listen to lawyers, the lawyers put them into a bunch of hot water. So if they had followed fundamental law and required the legislature and the people who were going after them to prove what they said, we wouldn't have this issue. They could have put all of the people on notice because they
So
violated their
See,
rights.
the beauty of this process is that you put the burden to bear on them, like all the best defense attorneys. And so instead, the J6 victims were all on the defensive, and they were scurrying around trying to beat them at their own game, compounded by the fact that they were all with rigged, bought and stolen lawyers from, Washington, D.C., your favorite little foreign territory there, Jocelyn. And so they didn't stand a chance. They had to do it the other way around. They should have done it the other way around. Hey, guys, you know what you're doing to me is unlawful. And the way I understand it is these are self-evident truths. Refute them and show me where I'm wrong, or let me go. You're wrongfully holding me. There were so many wrongs. They have so much so many paths for remedy, and it just
So
takes
we need to start
letting
educating
the light bulb
people
go on.
on that. All right, my friends, I'm off.
Yeah.
Don't forget that we have a chat every Tuesday and Thursday night, and that's on my Broadcasters News and Reviews. And you can pop on there, and we have wonderful people like Joan and Ron and Wild Will, Stiletto, me. I'm not so loud because I get really tired. I get up at 4 a.m. I'm used to being a 4 a.m. girl and doing shows and hopping on the ambulance, so I'm kind of pooped. So I want to thank you so much for coming on. I hope that I can get Daniel
You're
on again.
welcome.
You know, I think we could do
Sure, and also
okay.
that would be fabulous. We'd love that. Anywhere we can share this information and share success stories. And also, we're available every day at 5 on Boston Broadside's X Twitter Spaces. So come on in and join the conversation. We urge everybody to please go to that Boston Broadside Twitter Spaces account, follow it, and then if you put on notifications, you get an alert that we're going live at 5. Come on in anytime, Jocelyn, promote anything you're doing. Even if you just have a question, for Ron. Hey, Ron, how do I do this? Come on to 5 at 5 on Boston Broadside on Space.
I love it.
Anytime.
Thank you so much. Blessings to both of you, and maybe I'll talk to you in a little bit. Thanks,
Back
Ron.
at you, and Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays for everyone.
You too.
Merry
Thanks,
Christmas.
Ron.